All right, welcome to our course on behavioral economics and marketing. So, over the next several sessions, we'll be exploring how the principles of behavioral economics can be applied to create more effective and impactful marketing strategies. Let's reintro exactly what behavioral economics is and why it's relevant for marketers today. So, we talked about this in the intro. Behavioral economics is the study of how real people make decisions in the real world. It looks at the psychological, emotional, and social factors that influence our choices rather than assuming the purely rational decision making that traditional economic models propose. The field of behavioral economics combines elements of economics and psychology, challenging the neoclassical view of the rational economic man who always makes perfectly informed, self-interested decisions. Instead, behavioral economics examines the differences between what people should do and what they actually do, and the consequences of those real-world behaviors. This is crucial for marketing because these behavioral factors play a huge role in how consumers engage with and respond to our messaging, offers, and campaigns. Traditional marketing approaches often fail to fully account for the complexities of human decision making. But by applying behavioral economics insights, we can create marketing strategies that are much more effective at driving the outcomes we want. So, what are some of the key principles of behavioral economics that we'll be exploring? First, there's the idea of bounded rationality. So, stick with me. This refers to the fact that people have limited cognitive abilities, information, and time. So we don't always make the correct choice from an economist's point of view, even if all the relevant information is available. We often rely on mental shortcuts and rules of thumb to make decisions rather than undertaking a full analytical process. Another core principle is loss aversion. This means that we tend to be much more averse to losses than we are eager for gains. So the pain of losing $100 is typically felt more acutely than the pleasure of gaining $100. This explains why people are often reluctant to take risks, even when the potential upside is significant. And then there are social norms, the implicit or explicit rules and expectations that govern behavior within a particular group or society. These social influences can have a big impact on our purchasing decisions and brand preferences. We're heavily influenced by what our peers are doing and what is considered normal or acceptable behavior. Now, how do these behavioral economic principles differ from the traditional economic view? So let's talk about that. The neoclassical economic model assumes that people are rational actors with stable preferences who always make decisions to maximize their own self-interest. But as we've seen, real human decision making is much messier and more context dependent than that. Behavioral economics acknowledges that we're bounded in our rationality, emotionally driven, and heavily influenced by our social environments. And it uses empirical research to study and understand these cognitive biases and mental shortcuts that shape our choices. So rather than starting with a set of idealized assumptions about how people should behave, behavioral economics looks at how people actually do behave in the real world. This allows us to create more realistic models and develop more effective strategies for influencing consumer behavior. Let's look at some concrete examples of how behavioral economics principles have been applied in marketing campaigns. So, one classic example is the decoy effect, used by The Economist magazine. They offered 3 subscription options: a web-only subscription for $59, a print-only subscription for $125, and a print and web bundle also for $125. The print-only option acted as a decoy that made the more expensive print and web bundle seem like a better value, even though it was the same price. So by strategically framing the options, they were able to shift consumer preferences. Another example is how Procter & Gamble leveraged loss aversion with their Tide Pods launch. So they didn't just compare their new product to the competition. They framed it as a replacement that would make your old detergent obsolete. This played on people's fear of missing out and not having the latest, greatest product, rather than a straightforward feature-benefit comparison. And we've also seen behavioral economics principles applied to pricing and packaging. So for instance, when Nivea introduced their Q10 anti-wrinkle cream, they offered a smaller 1-ounce version for $20 and a larger 2.5-ounce version for $39.50. This anchoring of the higher price for the larger size made the 1-ounce jar seem like a better deal, even though the per ounce price was higher. Consumers tend to use these price cues as mental shortcuts rather than doing precise calculations. So we've seen how principles like defaults, framing, social proof, and loss aversion can have a big impact on consumer behavior, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. The possibilities for applying behavioral economics insights are endless. In fact, the benefits of incorporating behavioral economics into marketing strategies are substantial. By understanding and leveraging these psychological factors, you can drive higher engagement, conversion rates, and long-term loyalty among your customers. For example, one study found that when a cafeteria moved water bottles to be more prominently displayed near the cash register, water sales increased by over 25%. Simply making the healthy choice more salient and accessible led to a meaningful shift in consumer behavior. Super easy. But of course, there are also ethical considerations to keep in mind. So while behavioral economics can be a powerful tool, we have to be careful not to manipulate or exploit consumers in ways that undermine their autonomy or even their trust. Transparency, consent, and respect for consumer welfare should always be the top priorities. We're not trying to trick anybody. There's a fine line between gently nudging people toward beneficial decisions and using the insights we're going to learn in this course to knowingly deceive or take advantage of consumers. As marketers, we have a responsibility to wield this power responsibly and with strong ethical principles. Over the next few sessions, we'll dive deeper into many of the concepts we've touched on today, exploring real-world case studies and equipping you with practical frameworks for applying behavioral economics to your own marketing efforts.